You can stay here.
Both in terms of the story and the aesthetics of the film, I mean, it's obviously inspired by one of the greatest artists of our time, David Lynch, who, of course, sadly passed away a few weeks ago.
I've been really mourning that. I acted with him twice in two different productions. First, Wild at Heart, and second, Hotel Room. And I had met him. I first met him for a film that did not ever get made in the late '80s. And then I was planning. I'm particularly sad that I mean, for many different reasons, but one of them is that he had a autobiography come out a few years back. And it was only in that biography I discovered, I did not realize this, but David Lynch was under the impression that he was the executive producer of What Is It?
I love you.
Now, he essentially was, but I didn't, we had a miscommunication. Had I thought that he thought he was the executive producer of What Is It? I would have been advertising this since 2005 when it appeared in Sundance. I've been in communication with him in various ways. He would have art shows, or there were email things. And with all these people, there's a lot of people that talk about, him having great influence. And he really did. Like, I'm sure it seems that he did it for a lot of people. He had great influence and support for me. I'm really grateful to him. But what happened was he had agreed to executive produce a different screenplay called It Is Mine. I went to one of the predominant production companies of so-called independent film. Mm-hmm. There was interest, but they let me know they were concerned about funding a film where a majority of the characters would be played by actors with Down syndrome. So I set out to make a short film, which I wrote, called What Is It? It was a short screenplay, like 24 pages. I made all of the characters to be played by actors with Down syndrome because I wanted to prove that it was viable to make a film with all of the characters to be played by actors with Down syndrome. Anyhow, so I went and showed David Lynch at his house in the Hollywood Hills a median cut, because he had been supportive. He did do things. He would write letters, and he was great. And you'll hear many people say that. He really was a great person. Yeah. Also a great world-class artist. So we've lost a great world-class artist. And then I knew him personally. I'm really sad that he's gone. And he was truly supportive. And I'm sure not just me. You hear a lot of people saying it, but it's real. Yeah. And so I showed him the film. We went into a room with the monitor, and he sat and chain smoked while he watched it. In the end, he said, I dig it, I dig it, I dig it. But he didn't say, I want to executive produce this movie. So I thought, oh, well, he wants to wait until the other film is ready. But in retrospect, I realized that he thought that was the film, and he did help with that film. I'm very upset that I didn't say that he was the executive producer, but I didn't want to take advantage. But I wouldn't have been taking advantage because he thought he had. So it's he knew it. The last time I saw him was at an art show he had in 2019. I communicated this to him in various ways. So at least he knew that there'd been this misunderstanding. But yeah, he's great. It's a real loss. It's a real loss. He's gone. But what a great person and a great film.
Like you say, that's what so many people are saying now. It's interesting again because so many of his films have this nightmarish quality.
We've met before, haven't we?
I don't think so.
At your house, don't you remember?
No, I don't.
As a matter of fact, I'm there right now.
That's crazy, man.
call me.
And then he's just the most gentle, kind, soft-spoken artist.
I wished Isabella Rossellini a happy birthday, but to you, Sir Paul McCartney, someone pointed out it's your birthday as well.
And also, I loved your small part in Wild at Heart. I love your line, I'm making my lunch!
What are you doing? I'm making my lunch!
Now that was, and he was, it was very specifically directed, like probably the most specific direction I've ever had, ever. And to the point that if it had been any other director, it probably would have been uncomfortable or unpleasant. But you know, he was. I think I read something Kyle MacLachlan wrote, saying, I think he was right about this, that David Lynch was not particularly verbal. You know, you hear him talk, and he does, but there's something accurate about that.
Action!
He talks. He spoke in a certain way.
You listen to Randy. I'm going to try to keep quiet. I may not be able to.
But there was really a lot going on in his head. You could tell, and I could feel that when he directed me, and it was intelligent. It was intelligent, but also manifested in an artistic sense. And I had, when I was 14, one of the movies that I went to, it was Eraserhead. And I did not know what it was. I just thought, is this an old movie from the 50s? Because it was black and white, and I'd never read anything about David Lynch. I just thought, this movie looks very interesting. And I was 14. And that film really was a hugely important film to me. I went and saw it over and over again, midnights. This was before Elephant Man had come out, so there wouldn't be that many people in the theater. And some people would get mad and like yell at the screen and walk out, and then it would get really, really quiet.
Beats the hell out of me. I got to think about it for a while.
So people want to give you a card?
Gosh, it was the best thing I've seen all year. I enjoyed it very much. My kind of movie. Some inane, bizarre person with a disturbed mind wrote that film, and I did not enjoy it.
I mean, David Lynch could do no wrong for me, but still, of all the films he ever made, for me personally, Eraserhead, just the cinematic expression, the cinematic syntax that he's using in that film, I think is such a pure form of expression. And he worked on it for such a long time. And it's an important film to go see in the theater, I think, because of the organ music, the sonic quality of the organ.
The low frequencies.
Like, yeah. The sonic quality, like you say, the low frequency, it gets into your bone marrow. And there's something about that it's a different experience than watching something on a video at home.
Yeah, I think Eraserhead may actually be my favorite David Lynch film. And the interesting part is, I sort of hated that film. I may have been one of the ones who shouted at it the first time, and then the second time, I just loved it. And I think many people have that sort of experiences with Lynch movies, that they can widely vary your experiences of the film as well. And I think on the second viewing, it dawned on me how funny it also is.
Do I just cut them up like regular chickens?
Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
There's a wide range of emotions that Eraserhead has. There is humor. There's even things that are a bit sad, and there's certainly terror.
Yeah. And I've just
stress.
I became a dad like 11 months ago, so I'm afraid to rewatch it now because, of course, it's very much a horror movie about about babies
Yeah.
becoming a dad and the
Yeah.
fears that are inherent to that.
Oh, you are sick.
As well. So I may have another new perspective on it as well the next
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I see it.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Eraserhead, Lynch has said that Kubrick said it was his favorite film.
That was a great moment for sure. It wasn't one of his favorites, it was his favorite.
And I had heard that he would show Eraserhead to the cast and crew of The Shining. I can see very clearly that The Shining is very much influenced, particularly in the audio, by Eraserhead. But what is it they say? Bad artists copy, great artists steal. And that's to me, Kubrick is a great artist who meaning that if a bad artist, you can tell, oh, this is derivative of something. Kubrick is a great artist.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be derivative of Eraserhead. Eraserhead is a great film. Shining is a great film. And they're you wouldn't say they're similar films, but I can very much see the influence that Kubrick had on The Shining from Eraserhead, particularly in the audio. But he's doing it with music. And Lynch had done that fantastic work with Alan Splett, where they're recording unusual sounds, and it's probably the most developed audio soundtrack ever made. Is the soundtrack for Eraserhead?
Yeah,
because it isn't just music. It's a panoply of various sounds to give moods and feelings. I cannot think of another film that is as developed of a soundtrack as that film.
There's one aspect, because of course now you're also talking about making art and that handcrafted way of making it. And there's this particular subject I'd love to talk to you about, because again, I think you've made, again, your book, I think you made so much special, interesting art also in terms of your movie. And one of the films you also did, we talked briefly last time about Beowulf, which I think is an underrated gem.
Fight me, damn you.
And while you were making that, that's a movie that was made like on the cusp of a technological breakthrough. It's one of those first performance capture kind of films.
Yeah.
So technological wise, that's so interesting, but there still had to be, it still has that human element, that acting element that had to be, interwoven into the technology of the film. But now we have artificial intelligence that's developing at a geometric rate. And you have art that is just like, it's boring, and sometimes it's stealing, and not in the cool Stanley Kubrick way, but stealing, other artists' work and making stuff out of it. And I love to hear someone from you who spends years making stuff and, makes it by hand and, is so passionate about it. How do you feel about sort of, of artificial intelligence and it's, spreading the way it is?
I think if it's ethically done, I think it's an incredible tool if it's ethically dealt with. Just on the macroscopic element of AI, you hear a lot of people concerned about the dystopic aspects of it. The first film dealing with it being Stanley Kubrick's 2001, the dystopic aspect of HAL.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
Becoming in control of the environment, and of course, the deaths of many of the astronauts and attempted murder on the final protagonist. I think it's very apparent that in terms of preventing the true dystopic possibility of AI, it's exceedingly important that AI never, ever is put in charge of the complete environment. That could be a true nightmare in terms of just within the arts. I mean, what I experienced with the Back to the Future situation was
almost a precursor to it in a way.
Is an exacting precursor, and I trust me, it is far worse than anybody might believe. I've talked about it to an extent, but on some levels I haven't talked about it.
Nice to see you back. You were in another one of those Back to the Future films, huh?
Well, they used portions of me from original footage, but they didn't actually.
Didn't use you?
Yeah, they put prosthetics on another actor to make them look like me and interspliced it. So
but do you still get paid for appearing in the film?
I haven't, as a matter of fact.
But are you entitled to payment?
I think I am, yeah.
Good. Yeah, we can make some calls later and, oh darn, no phone.
What people can do is horrific. I've experienced it. It's really not fun. And they think maybe they're being clever or funny or whatever. It's not. It's illegal. It's not cool. It's really not good. And then it goes in multiple levels and it affects one's life in multiple levels. It's really, really, really bad. And as bad as I might be able to verbalize it, it's worse. And to take somebody against their will and utilize it for someone's own means against that person's will for profit that the other person is not involved in is just bad. And so on that level, yes, AI needs to be ethically done. But what is it that somebody's influenced by? It's like you could claim that a story, there's only one story. Or you can say there's, 14 stories. Or, you can say there's all these different levels of storytelling. But it's something that has been happening. We don't know exactly when storytelling started. 100,000, 200,000, maybe longer. And so what is stolen or what is influenced? Well, humans influence each other. That's part of what storytelling is about. So on some level, you can't get upset about stories being influencing each other. And then what is it that's stolen or what is it that's influenced? And is AI stealing or is it a form of intelligence that is using influence in the same way that human intelligence is using influence? When some of it first came out, I liked the painter Edward Hopper. And, you could go on and say, do something in the style of Edward Hopper. And really, relatively diligently, it sort of looked like an Edward Hopper painting on that. And of course, Edward Hopper's dead, and his paintings, images are essentially public domain. But the question of visual artists right now, contemporarily, that have stuff online, and then the AI is culling that information. And if somebody said, do this in the style of whatever the contemporary artist is, and that person is still making a living from their artwork, that is questionable. That could be damaging to that person's livelihood. And they've taken these decades to manifest their style. So those things are questionable. And like I said, what I've experienced with Back to the Future and the fact that, I mean, publicly people know it's illegal, but Bob Gale particularly says, "Oh, we didn't do anything wrong." I mean, it's laughable. I'm glad people laugh at it. They see that this guy's, whatever. I mean, I could get really bitterly angry, but I'm glad I can laugh about it at this point because it's so utterly absurd. The guy is, it's stealing, and people know that, and they recognize it, and
the courts recognized it. I mean,
so these things are an issue that really need to be carefully dealt with. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I because of my experience with it, I mean, it's exact. What I've experienced is completely as prescient toward what's going on with it. So
yeah,
it really is important to deal with properly. And it's I'm sure there's going to be some strange things that will happen.